Imagine this, your brother asks you for a loan because he has lost some money in the stock market. Not only that, he has actually borrowed from the banks to fill up this loss, and he's actually maxed out the bank loan already. You ask, how much have you exactly lost? There's a pause, a deep breath. 400,000. 400,000? Now that amount is humongous, correct? And that's actually not impossible. So if you check out this article over here, the reason for losing is not really important really, because at this moment, our decision is whether to lend the money or not. And that's today's discussion. Now, when we talk about money lending, it's a sticky topic. If it's really a family, real blood brother, it's definitely hard to say no. I understand that. And the reason people ask for loans from family members is because very likely they've maxed out all opportunities with the bank already. They can't go there anymore further. And this embarrassment of borrowing from family has to be faced. The fire is real, and especially if it's the first time borrowing this amount, I guess the person borrowing is in deep trouble. On the other hand, if the person is borrowing from you every other month, then that's a different case. That's a chronic problem. There could be some addiction somewhere like gambling that you need to check and you need to resolve first before lending. But this case, which is much more common, is when someone needs a big ad hoc amount, the first time out of the blue asking you for a loan. Now, loans to family members is always a no-win situation, and it's hard to say no. And let's run through some reasons on why it's a no-win situation. The first is that the person borrowing will not take it as seriously as if they've gone to a bank, because the consequence is just the relationship. Whereas if they go to a bank and they default on it, there is repercussions. Banks will clamp down on it, or there could be debt collection that eventually comes about. The second reason why it's a no-win situation is that if you're the person lending, you have to expect a slow repayment. Again, that ties into the first point, whereby the borrowing person, however big the amount is, will not feel that pressure to repay you immediately when he or she has that ability to do so. So that slow repayment is common. If you expect it to be resolved as soon as the person has that funds, then the expectation could disappoint you severely. So that leads to a third part, which is before lending, you probably need to ask questions. It's prudent to demand full transparency. See the losses. What is the next step of action? Ask the questions, because if you solve it too quickly without realizing the underlying causes of it, that problem might still come back. And probably the final important point to note is, if it's possible, go with the minimum. Because if you're thinking, interest rates are so high, there's a bank loan there, you're rushing to pay off the interest also, because as a family, as a unit, there is savings. But if you rush to settle the problem, it becomes a missed opportunity to learn from that lesson. And just as a further point to note, it's also advised by specialists that if you want to make a loan to a family member, it's best not to keep it a secret from your spouse. Yes, it is true that it's still a family member-in-law, but again, money issues are things that can strain a family's relationship and can cause certain doubt and breach of trust. Now let's talk the situation if it's a friend asking you for a loan. And at this point, my first gut feeling is to say no. And if you think about it, no is actually very possibly the harder thing to say. Because each and every person, we don't like to risk the friendship. And as we have mentioned so far, it's a no-win situation. But also, when we think about it rationally, we're all adults. We understand that some friends we may not remember in 20 years' time. And there are fewer points to note also, is that when it comes to friends, help can be done in many ways. It can be an introduction to a job opportunity. It can be an introduction to doing it properly. But exactly solving it may not be your responsibility. Other points to note is, if you're lending to a friend, and if the amount is small, like $100 or a few $100, maybe you can see it as a treat. No harm. Doesn't really make you feel too angry. That's fine. But if the amounts are big, like a few thousand, or 10,000, or even 20,000, then you waste your time and energy in finding out when these monies can be repaid back to you, because this amount is substantial already. It can help you in your own family's life. So again, the better answer for that is probably no. And with that, I'll open up this podcast for discussion. Have you had a situation whereby a family member or friend has borrowed money from you? And how have you handled that? So think about it. Loans to families and friends is a financial topic that we need to address. And I've given my inputs, and if this has benefited you, smash the like button, smash the subscribe, and I'll see you next podcast. Take care and goodbye.